All right, you on it?
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
I'd like to call this special session, Board of Education, in order. At this time, Ms. Weckerser, please make note, 5 board members are present in the boardroom, and the other 2 are joining us by Zoom, so we have a quorum. At this time, I'll ask for the invocation by Mr. Mike Wooten, and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Teresa Grant.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just come before you, dear God, and just thank you for many blessings upon life, dear God, and ask that you be with the citizens that are in the path of Hurricane Laura, dear Lord, and just be with them, hope the protection of life and property, dear God. And during this pandemic, be with our school system, dear Lord, as we navigate through this COVID-19, that you will bless and protect our staff and teachers and students and parents as we make decisions tonight, dear Lord. I just ask that you help us make the best decision that would be pleasing in your eyes, dear God, and just protect us and open the minds of our students as they learn in different ways, dear God, and that the summer slide the gap would be minimized as much as possible, dear Lord, that you just be with them, help them absorb all the education they can during these tough times, dear Lord. We're careful to give you all the praise and glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'm in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, good evening. Thank you for having us again tonight. We want to thank you for allowing us as an executive team to have made previous presentations on our school reopening plan. We've had the opportunity to come before you.
Tracy, could you speak up just a little bit, please?
We've had the can you hear me now, Dr. Smith?
I can, thank you.
Okay, we've had the opportunity to come before you with various PowerPoints and presentations and data points prior to this meeting. So I just want to have a brief discussion with you tonight, then I'll make a recommendation and turn it back over to the chair. This is my 58th day on the job here in Johnson County Public Schools, and it has been everything that I imagined it would be. And I was up working late last night, and I reflected upon the interview process that we had, where we got to know one another, I thought, very well. And I hope that I was able to convey or articulate how much or how important I feel that visibility of a superintendent is in the school system. And I say all that to say you will never, or most likely will not, meet a superintendent who loves being in schools as much as I do. I believe it is the greatest way to spend a day, and there's nothing like spending a day going in and out of classrooms and having interactions and conversations with students and teachers, asking students, how is it going? What are you learning? Is the teacher meeting your needs? And in turn, having conversations with teachers and asking them, what can I do from my level as a superintendent to help you reach your children? And in turn, also asking principals what I can do to help them help their teachers, teach schools, teach students. I feel I have a simple job, but I have a job with a lot of complexities. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to help principals, help teachers, teach schools, teach students. And I want to applaud all of our teachers who are amazing and are working hard under the current strains and stresses of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I also want to thank our campus and our district leaders for all the wonderful work that they have done thus far as well. They really deserve our praise. And I will be, for one, thankful the day we bring all of our students back in our buildings. But at this time, I feel that due to the my health concerns and the safety for the students, the staff in Johnson County Public Schools, I recommend that we remain on Plan C for the remainder of the first grading period. And that grading period will end on October 15th. And as I said a little early, I am making this recommendation because I am concerned about the health and safety of our students, our staff members, and our families. I'm very concerned about the virus spreading more in our schools. Since June, we've had 38 Johnson County Public School staff that have tested positive for COVID-19. We've had 14 test positive just in the month of August. And in the month of August, we've had 65 staff members that have been quarantined. And I am concerned that if we bring students, staff, these numbers will only increase. So at that time, that is a recommendation I'll make tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Bracy. You know, and I think I speak for all the board members and everybody in this district. We want them all back in the schools as soon as possible. And I think everybody wants the safety and well-being of each student, staff member, anybody that comes on Johnson County Public Schools campuses. And, you know, Dr. Bracy, I support your recommendation to, you know, continue Plan C until October 15th. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Zukowski, second by Ms. Sessoms. At this time, I entertain any questions or comments.
Dr. Bracy, you mentioned
Yes, sir.
You mentioned October 15th. Can you give me any reasoning of why you would pick October 15th, that you would feel maybe we'd be ready to transition from Plan C? I mean, why not October 1st or September 30th? I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be funny, but, you know, October 15th, that doesn't mean our, you know, COVID issues are going to disappear, but I'm just curious of why you chose that date, sir.
I chose that date because if we delay the return to October 15th, that would give our students and our teachers an entire grading period under the same learning format. We will be 100% virtual for that learning format. I think that'll be an easier transition for our students and our staff.
And this may be a bit premature, but where do you see the district moving October 15th? Do you see us, you know, Plan B? You know, what is your vision for, I mean, because you can't predict, I mean, you can't predict exactly how things will be, but what do you foresee and what do you envision for October 15th as far as what could parents expect? I mean, I'm not saying I support this, but what I'm saying is what could parents expect on October 15th?
Well, I'm hopeful that all of our students can return. I don't know if that's a reality, but I don't know what the governor is going to say when he next speaks and talks about the different phases. I echo what Chairman Sutton said. We all are ready for our students to come back in full force, and I'm hopeful that that will be the case in October 15th.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, Dr. Smith.
Before I cast my vote, I have some things to say and some really kind of statements more than questions. There are 4 former teachers at this table. There are 7 parents at this table, so we understand the perspective from all sides. I'm first going to address teacher concerns. I'll type these up tomorrow and send them to the task force and the cabinet. First of all, they're concerned about childcare. If they're going to be in the building, we suggest that other employees be assigned to small groups to provide childcare for staff children. The second concern has been inconsistent expectations. Some children are at computers 4 hours a day, others log in and out multiple times. There's no consistency, and teachers are desperate for some consistent expectations. The third concern is the schedule. A high school schedule was developed that we had some objections to, but at least there was a consistent schedule sent out to all the high schools. I have not seen such a schedule for elementary teachers who are desperate to have some consistency. Again, that has been a resounding concern. And we need that schedule pretty quickly, like now. Number 4, multiple logins. I understood that we had a platform that would be a one-stop shop for all places that students had to go, and this expectation is not being met. I hear from teachers that their broadband is not sufficient, that it's kicking people in and out. It's just bad. Number 5, teachers are concerned because staff are not following protocols for masks. As we stated before, this is not an option. We expected everybody to wear masks, and that's not happening. Number 6, working from school is preferred by many, but not if they are being placed at risk. They need to be where their materials are and where their principals can help them. But with no masks, people are severely concerned. Number 7, there are not enough teachers, so we suggest, as Mr. Johnson suggested at the last meeting, that central office and coaches be temporarily assigned to teach until this pandemic is over. It will take everyone working together to survive for the children, and the children are our concern. Number 8, disruptions. There must be a way for teachers to mute students who talk over them during instruction. Here at Campbell, our system allows me to mute everybody as moderators, and you ask to speak by raising your hand or chatting. It's a simple fix, but teachers must have some support for that issue. Again, technology concerns. Many schools have waiting lists for hotspots, and bandwidth continues to be a concern. Now I'd like to address, just briefly, parent concerns. Number 1, not everybody has a hotspot. Parents are being denied because they have internet, but both parents are at home, both parents working online, and the child cannot access without creating screen and muffled sound problems. We need to accommodate those parents. Number 2, there's no social time for children. We suggest that teachers bring small groups of 5 to 10 online at a time, varying them so that the whole class gets to talk to each other. We also need that social time for children's mental health. They need to see their friends. Number 3, guidance from the district would set protocols to allow students to talk with each other. Number 4, 100 or more students online at a time in middle and high school. This is the very antithesis of meeting any kind of social and emotional needs that we talk about so much. Small groups at a time with some student talk time is critical to meeting both academic and social needs. Students in a school have recess, lunch, travel time to talk. They're craving being back face-to-face with their friends, and if that can't happen, they can be face-to-face virtually. Many students, as parents say, are spending too much time on computers. They need some break time. I also hear that lessons are not able to be accessed. They are live lessons, and we need to videotape so that parents can access them when they have to work all day. And most importantly, they need materials. Where are the books that they would have had if they were in the school? And then finally, my general questions. Is it possible for pre-K, kindergarten, and self-contained exceptional children to remain on campus and do our face-to-face schedule? Kindergarten children cannot read instructions. They cannot hear. They need to be face-to-face if we can possibly do that. And then can schools open quasi-daycare centers for those teachers and parents who are desperate for help getting through this? We can't afford the loss of any more students out of our district, and parents are taking their students to other districts, as we mentioned before. And then finally, can exceptional children's related services be provided at schools where before parents were willing to bring them? I don't see any reason why they can't still provide those services at the school. So there is my synopsis, long though it was. I appreciate the time to share that and to let people know that their concerns have been heard and expressed, and I will send these tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I took some good notes too, but I'd appreciate if you submitted all that so that just in case I missed one of those important items that you shared with us. But Ms. Grant.
Yep. Dr. Smith, I want to say thank you. I shared much of that with Dr. Bracey before the meeting, so we're on the same page with a lot of that. And while I am certainly concerned with the health and safety of all of our staff and all of our students.
Ms. Grant, I can't hear you, dear.
Okay, while I am still very concerned for the safety of our staff and our students, we still have roughly 60% of our parents that are begging us to allow their students to go back to school. We still have, I'm not sure the number of staff, but is it still roughly that same number, Dr. Bracy? Do you think 60%?
I'm not aware of any new survey data.
So 70%, I think, was the last number
I
that we
don't-
had
I don't recall.
officially.
Yeah.
So, and we are still hearing from those teachers that they want to be in the classroom teaching their students face-to-face. We decided as a board that we would give our parents the choice to decide whether their students had in-person learning or virtual. And we decided as a board to let our staff decide whether they wanted to be remote or in person. Changing this vote now is going against what we said we wanted to do for those students and staff last time we were here. I appreciate, Dr. Bracy, you putting the dashboard up. I've been wanting those numbers up so people can see and make an informed decision. Because if they know how many COVID cases there are, they may decide that virtual is what they want for their students. More staff members may decide. I wish it had come out sooner, but I'm glad it's there now. And I'm glad to know the numbers because we didn't know what they were either. So I appreciate that. But that's how people make informed decisions, is by having the information that they need. And the information that they had prior to today, they still wanted to be in person. And so I still have to listen to the people who want to be in person, and I want to listen to those who want to be virtual.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Wooten?
I pretty much ditto Miss Grant, and, we wanted parents to have a choice. I'm really concerned about the well-being of students, social and emotional, making sure that EC face-to-face students have their education face-to-face, and as well as speech therapists and those type sessions need to be face-to-face. But I'm like you, Ms. Grant, is we got protocols in place. Safety and security of us teachers and staff and students is paramount. But also parents should have a choice. I agree with that.
I just want to say one thing too. I have a teacher at home, have many teachers in my family and friends as well, and have a daughter that's in the school system. And I want them in there just as bad as anybody else. K-5 is very, very critical. K-12 is really where we want to go. I think we're all on that page. It's just the difference of timing is what it is. I wanted them in there yesterday as well. Unfortunately, with everything going on around us, I hear what you all are saying. Pre-K, kindergarten, EC is very critical at this point. Not saying that our other grades are not critical, but that is where it starts. They can't read, they can't write, and so forth. So Dr. Bracy, regarding pre-K, kindergarten, EC on our campus, what are your thoughts on that? How could we proceed there?
Well, we can definitely, Mr. Chair, members of the board, look at the logistics and the staffing of those particular groups of students being on our campus, and we can prepare a report to you all for the September board meeting, listing the detailed plans for that. We can look at those options. We'll be glad to as a staff.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be an anticipated start date of when? When you say look at options, I'd hate to just get into the details before we look into the options, but when we talk about those particular groups of students, what would be an anticipated start date in your mind right now based on the conversation we're having?
It's hard to say right now, Mr. Johnson, having not had specific conversations with those staff, looking at who has requested work accommodations, looking at who has requested the telework initially, but we will have all that hard data for you at the September 8th meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say, first of all, I've heard many of the same concerns, and
Dr. Smith, thank you for summarizing all of those so well. Back when we made this decision about going to Plan B, a blended model, I completely supported that decision because I do believe that our K-5 need as much hands-on, face-to-face interaction as they possibly can have. But given the numbers of staff that we have who are either quarantined or have medical accommodations and are not able to report to work, what I'm hearing from teachers is that it is just not possible at the elementary level to do a blended model. When I agreed to that model, I was under the impression that elementary teachers would be divided so that one set of elementary teachers handled all of the virtual, and that included virtual academy. It included the off days when students were at home. And that the other set of elementary teachers would be only responsible for the face-to-face on the 2 days a week for each group that they would be teaching. And given the constraints between the state not giving us flexibility on class sizes, the lack of flexibility on funding, so that as well as other flexibilities, the majority of our elementary schools just do not have the staff to make a blended model work. And these teachers are dedicated. We all want these children back. If I got to wave a magic wand, the virus would go away and we would have them all back with us tomorrow. But it's not safe. I was brought up to believe that when there are no good options, and that's where we are right now, when there are no good options, you err on the side of safety. So I completely support the superintendent. I've never been a superintendent. I don't have a superintendent's license. I am a former educator, and we hired this man because he has a proven track record for making good decisions, and I just believe that he has the facts, and we need to support him in whatever recommendation he makes.
And Ms. Sessoms, I remind everybody that the facts have changed since we made our decision. We did not have outbreaks at our schools. We did not have our employees who are having COVID, and that changed my perspective. And what you said about placing safety first has to be our number one concern. And as you and we all know, students need to be back with their teachers. They need to be interacting. But if we do virtual right, they can have social interaction and they can see their friends. They won't be on the playground with them, but they can talk with them if teachers will just give them that few minutes. When we used to do math manipulatives, we gave them a few minutes to play with the materials, to get kind of used to them, and then you got down to what you wanted to teach that day. So I'm really encouraging teachers to use some social emotional time, and for counselors to get online and meet with students. Social workers, everybody needs to be helping these students who are so depressed, who are not having their friends. And they go to camps and they say, why can't I go to school? That's a really good question. It's a really good question why other schools can stay open with everybody. But when we have 35,000 students and 3,500 teachers and employees whose lives are at risk, and I've had several teachers say, I really wanted to go back. My heart was set on seeing my children, but I have a husband at home with a heart condition, or my mother is compromised, and I can't take the chance on bringing that home to her. So many of those data on which we based our last decision are no longer relevant or accurate. And so as much as we all want this to happen, I'm with you with supporting our superintendent. He has studied the data. He's talked with people. He's been out in the schools. And that is where we have to err, is on the side of safety. So thank you for saying that.
And this will probably be the last thing I say in the essence of giving people a decision. This is probably the first time I've been on the Board of Education I have felt a tremendous amount of humility, and this situation is certainly humbling. And, you know, I've heard safety concerns. And make no mistake, if you want your kids back in school, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. If you want them to go back September 8th, you're not wrong. And if you feel unsafe and fearful, you're not wrong either. However, there are risks associated with everything in life. And I feel that if a parent has made the decision that they want their child to go back to school, and we told them September 8th, then who am I to say your child doesn't belong in school? And if you're a teacher, or you're a staff member, or you're a family member that doesn't want to go back, and that virtual option is available for you, again, you're not wrong either. I just want people to have the options that they are entitled to. And this is not an easy decision. Every one of us get the same emails. You know, we need to go back to school. And then we get those emails. There's safety concerns. We can't go back to school. You know, I watched a young lady this morning trying to manage a restaurant with her daughter coming out of an office, not understanding what to do. She's trying to manage a restaurant, go back there and help with the virtual classroom. And that is taxing on people, and some people just aren't equipped to do it. We are almost 6 months into this, and no one really knows what this is. People can say they know, but they don't know. And I'm not some tyrant with sinister motivations trying to push kids into a school building, but I certainly believe you have the right to decide what's best for your child. And, you know, I'm going to leave it at that. Not sitting here taking an adversarial stance with anybody. You know, Dr. Bracy, I don't know how many days you've been here, but they've been good days. They've been good days. I know you're in touch. I know you're about being in the schools and trying to find out what our people need. And, you know, I've felt a great amount of humility, but at the end of the day, I think it's all about choice. And that's where I'm gonna stand.
The decision's not easy at all. And you're right, we get parents who want to send their kids back to school. We get parents and teachers who are fearful for their students to go back to school. As an educator, it's imperative that our kids are in front of our teachers, building those relationships, getting that one-on-one help. I think the bottom line is there's not a right answer and there's not a wrong answer. We just have to make the best of the situations that we are in. And I get more and more teachers who are working ungodly hours, trying to make it work and doing their best with everything that they have in front of them. And they want to be in front of their students, and they want their students to grow this year. That has never changed for anybody. I think the culprit is COVID, and I too want to err on the side of safety. I think about our teachers who were fighting cancer and still going into the classroom amongst this, a pandemic. I think about our kids who are doing the same thing, and I have to err on the side of safety.
Mr. Johnson, you bring up a lot of points. I mean, if this wasn't a tough decision for any of us, we would have been out at 6:02 because of everything. And I think that everybody understands that this is a very tough decision for this board. We're torn. You're right. Choice and everything else. And what I would want to say for this board, regardless of what happens here, we're a united board, because we all feel that every student and teacher needs to be back in the classroom. And God forbid, we're going to do whatever is necessary and make sure that, and it is a very tough decision, but you made some very good points. Ms. Grant, you made some very good points. Everybody here, we all have the same goal in mind. So if there's no other comments.
Just want to make one more. At October 15th, I understand that's the end of a grading period, that's why it's picked, but we may have 14 cases in October. We might have 30. And even these teachers who know that we have COVID cases, many of them knew a lot more than we knew until today about how many cases were out there. And they say, I realize it is there, but I still want to be in school. And I don't know what's going to be any different on October 15th than September 8th, other than a grading period.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Due to two members being remote, we have to go to a roll call vote. So I'll start with Mr. Johnson.
I vote no.
Ms. Zukowski.
I vote yes.
Ms. Grant.
I vote no.
Mr. Wooten.
I vote no.
Dr. Smith.
I vote yes.
Ms. Sessoms.
I vote yes.
Chairman Sutton, before you vote, because we're at a tie now, I would like to make a motion to amend the current motion on the table. And that would be to only delay grades 4 and 5 and bring pre-K through 3 back still on September 8th, as well as our EC self-contained. And like to add that we have in-person services for our students with IEP. I make that motion to amend.
I'll second her motion.
So we have a motion to amend the previous motion, or previous motion for K-5 to be wait until October 15th. Now you're saying pre-K, EC, and through third grade.
So currently the motion is all children wait until October 15th. And I'm saying let's at least don't do that to our pre-K through 3 and our EC self-contained. This virtual learning is hard for all of our students. It's exceptionally hard for our elementary students. It is basically impossible for our pre-K and our EC self-contained and our kindergartners. And we know all the way through third grade, that is just critical years. I just implore you to consider at least bringing those students back on September 8th.
I'd like to ask Dr. Bracy if he has any notion about whether the staff would be, if there would be enough staff who would be willing to do that.
Dr. Smith, I would have to look at the staff accommodations that have been asked for. You know, we got 65 people that are currently under quarantine. I can't speak specifically to how many of those teachers or staff members or our kindergarten through third grade staff members. I simply don't have that information in front of me, to be very honest with you. But I would imagine several of those 65 are, because we know from the dashboard that 40 of the 65 quarantine staff members work at the elementary level. So I would imagine that many of those are members or teach or work in those grade levels.
But the second point to Ms. Grant's situation proposal, I guess, is that the very young children are least at risk and least apt to be carriers. And so,
Dr. Smith, I don't know that for a fact that the younger children are least at risk or least likely to be carriers. I'm unsure of that. I don't mean to disagree with you, but I'm not aware of that.
As far as I know, when I taught 8th grade science and we learned about viruses, they don't know how old somebody is, and they don't know the time of the day. I mean, science and research may be showing that there's not as many who have the virus, but we wouldn't know why. But I don't know.
I mean, personally, that'd be I'm agreeing with you on that, Z.
I think the CDC has made those observations. I could be wrong, but that seems to be where my source came from.
I think, from what I have read, that the CDC and the Academy of Pediatrics have said that young children can return to school as long as the COVID numbers are low for that community. And it is my understanding that we have the 9th highest rate of confirmed infections in the state.
That is accurate, Ms. Essems. We are 9th in the state as far as confirmed cases. 9 out of 100 counties.
So that would not hold true then for Johnston County.
But I think it's important to consider those young children who cannot do virtual. I think Ms. Grant has a good compromise in that they are not able, and so many of them do not have support systems. They're in daycares. Daycares are operating, private schools are operating, camps operated. I think there's merit to bringing the very young. I'm not sure I would go up to 3rd grade, but I certainly am interested in looking at pre-K, kindergarten, and exceptional self-contained.
I would, if I may speak freely, I would also say that yes, daycares are open, dance studios are open, but there are also outbreaks happening in daycares and dance studios as well. I was notified of one today that has multiple outbreaks or infections of COVID in it. So I would just ask the board to keep that in mind. And I will say again that we want our kids in school as soon as possible, and we will continue to work toward getting our students in schools.
And in addition to that, I think that anytime we make a decision, we need to understand if it's logistically possible to do that, and I'm not sure that we know that yet. Correct, Dr. Bracey?
Correct. Don't know that as of tonight, Ms. Zukowski.
Ms. Zukowski, would you repeat what you said? I'm sorry, I couldn't clearly hear it.
Of course. I just asked Dr. Bracey, I said, in the light of everything, we don't have the data to support if we can logistically make pre-K3 happen. We really need to know where our staff members are and where they're at school-wise, and whether or not they're pre-K to 3rd grade teachers and EC self-contained teachers that are not in quarantine or have not requested to telework. The last thing that I would hate to happen is for us to move forward with that and that the students go to school and sit in a classroom to watch a screen.
And Dr. Bracey, Ms. Whittington was supposed to pull information to let us know how many teachers we were short at each school. Mr. Johnston asked for a list of how many central office staff and Glenn building staff were K-5 certified. If the 4th and 5th grade teachers, if some of those are, well, they would all be virtual, so there's a possibility that during this time, if some of those are wanting to be back in person, that they could come in person, and some of the K through 3 that were wanting to be virtual could teach K through 5. We're not asking for a lifetime of change. We're asking for a very short period of time to get our kids back in school and start trying to help, especially these young ones, have some sense of normalcy in their life and education, because our pre-K, our kindergarten, even first and second graders, it's hard for them to do this virtual education. I mean, we've got parents and kids in tears over this experience so far, and we're only on day 9.
I would like to speak to that for just a moment. I do, again, I echo some of the concerns that Dr. Smith and Ms. Grant made in terms of the virtual learning. I do think that there is going to have to be some adjustments made, because a kindergarten student or a first grader or even a second grader cannot sit in front of a computer for 4.5 hours. With that said, that's we can fix that, or our administration and our teachers can fix that. But at the end of the day, we cannot fix a child who has died from COVID. At the end of the day, we cannot fix a staff member who has died from COVID. And this, again, this is for a short, hopefully a short period of time. But Johnston County is going to have to decide that it wants to get rid of this virus and do the things that it takes to make this virus not be an issue in our county. Until that happens, we're going to continue to have to kick this can down the road. And that's not fair to parents, it's not fair to teachers, it's not fair to our staff, it's not fair to anyone. This is the most unfair thing that I've ever observed as an educator, and I hate it because nobody wants to be in this situation. And but I just, as Ms. Zukowski said, we don't have the information about whether we could do pre-K, EC, and kindergarten to bring them all back. If we try to make a decision like that tonight without the information, then we're making another uninformed decision, which we will later, may very well later regret.
I agree, Ms. Sessoms.
I just want to get a clarification. First time we've ever had this happen, so I conferred with our council. But once the voting has started, we can't have an amendment to the current motion. So we would have to
I
finish.
spoke to Mr. Sue before the meeting started and got his guidance on that before.
We just got clarification from Mr. Sue.
And just to be clear, you probably can't hear me on the thing, but so Ken called me, told me that you had talked to him, and he did say that he told you that the motion could be made at any time during the discussion. But when the voting starts, then you're kind of voting. And if you think about it more like if it wasn't virtual voting, it really would have been boom, boom, right? The only reason that it was this drawn out is because of the manner in which you're having to vote. So once the voting starts, a motion to amend at that particular point is not acceptable.
Okay, because I hear you, but I specifically asked that question. Did I have to make the motion during the discussion, or could I wait and make the motion after the voting began? Because if it was going to pass and students were going back, I would need to amend. And he told me I could make it at any point in time. I hear what you're saying.
I sent him a text when I saw this happening, and to make sure, and he apologized if he misunderstood that.
So at this time, I will finish the vote. I vote yes to hold off on coming back to October 15th, so the motion carries 4-3. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Motion and a second. Mr. Johnson? Ms. Zukowski?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Wooten? Dr. Smith?
Yes?
Ms. Sessoms?
Yes.
I vote yes.